Now, different types of loan programs. You know, there are so many different types of loans. You can go from a 30-year fixed, a 20-year fixed, a 15-year fixed, and then you also have the adjustable rate mortgage type loans. And as Chris had touched on that, it all really depends on how long do you really plan to stay in this property. 30-year loans are the most conservative program you can ever get. And the reason why I say that is, once you get a 30-year fix, that's your rate for the next 30 years. This is your payment for the next 30 years. No surprises, no changes. But being a first-time home buyer, do you guys really think you're going to keep this home, this first home that you're going to buy for the next 30 years? Probably not. You guys, your lives are going to change. You're going to get married. You're going to start a family. You're going to outgrow this home. So the likelihood of you really keeping one given loan for 30 years is highly unlikely. If you plan on keeping this home and say, hey, I'm going to start my investment portfolio, that might be an option to keep it as a 30-year term, because then you're locked in at a much lower rate. And when it becomes a rental, you're paying that lower rate on a rental property. The different loan options, like a 20-year fix or a 15-year fix, they typically will offer great rates on that. And it's just a rapid pay down of the loan. You'll have home ownership in a much shorter period of time because you're locked in for 20 or 15 years. Now, ARM products, and what an ARM product is it's called an adjustable rate mortgage. There are loans where you're going to have, they'll call it like a 7-1. And what a 7-1 is, where it's fixed for a 7-year term. In the last 23 years, it's an adjustable rate. Those programs actually work really well for first-time homebuyers because, again, how long do you plan to keep the home? Most people actually own a home, or actually, once they buy a home, the likelihood of them keeping the loan, it normally changes within the first 2 to 5 years of that life of that loan. Let it be that you refinance because rates have changed, or value properties have increased, where it says, hey, now property's worth a lot more money. That bathroom that I wanted to remodel, I'm going to take it out of the property. You'll refinance. Somewhere along the line, these rates, your loan products will change, and you will change out of that. That's just something good, just to keep an open mind, and just kind of assess what your needs and what your plans are going to be for the future. But the rates on an ARM product are typically lower than the fixed rates. So when you go out there and you actually do rate shopping, you'll typically find that adjustable rate mortgages are going to be much, much lower, especially versus a 30-year term. And one thing that I did want to mention on when you do purchase your home, that you think about where you want to buy, you think about how long you plan to live there, the type of property that you buy, because it all really will determine how long you actually will keep things. In this economy, this marketplace, condos and townhouses they used to be much more affordable than single families, but it's slowly changing now, where actually the needs for condos and townhouses are much more than a single family. So, and once you guys get out in that world, I'm sure you guys will find out and you figure out where you guys want to live. Investment properties, I believe actually investment properties is actually a good thing to do. When you hold investment properties long term, that's where you really reap the benefits. When you hold an investment property long term, that means that you will go through the ups and downs of the economy. But eventually, when you're ready to sell, as you pay down that loan and the value of that home is increased, that's just an extra nest egg for you when you want to sell. Yes?
Good question. I know the mortgage for investment property is higher, the rate is higher than primary residence. So how does the bank know that you're going to invest it, rent it out, Airbnb, rather than give a little bit by yourself? I heard, you can just get everything for a primary residence, and then you can just immediately rent it out as investment, and the bank wouldn't know.
There's some truth in that. When you apply for a loan, we as a lender will believe in you in good faith that, hey, I'm buying this house to live in. Things change in life. And I'm going to use my own personal experience. I bought a home with a friend. When I closed escrow, my father passed away. So I ended up actually staying back to take care of my mom. That home became a rental immediately. And I didn't forecast that coming. So, but in regards to how a bank would know, we wouldn't know. A bank, once your loan is closed, once you sign that, the documents, you're locked into whatever term of loan that you have. You're locked into the rate. You're locked into that payment. So if you end up releasing this home out, the bank is not going to have a recourse unless you actually tell the bank, hey, I'm no longer living here. It's a rental property. Now, it's very common for especially first-time home buyers. When you buy a house, how many of you guys are going to probably rent out rooms? I did that. I mean, that's a way of just reducing your monthly output by renting out rooms. But you're still living in it, but you're also making money off of it. So, but really, just to answer your question, the bank won't know. They won't know unless you tell us.
Okay, in that case, then every single loan I take, I'll just take for primary residence.
Well,
why would I take it?
Only up to, okay, so typically, when you buy your first home, it's called a primary residence. If you end up, say, a year later down the line, I'm going to buy a second home, and I want to call it a primary residence, it has to make sense. So if you bought a home here in Palo Alto, and you paid $1 million for it now, and you work here at Stanford, and then a year down the line say, hey, I'm going over to the East Bay side, I'm going to buy a home in Stockton. I'm going to call it a primary residence, but I still work here at Stanford. The bank is going to look at that and say, you want to live in Stockton, say that's your primary home, but you want to live in Palo Alto, and does that make sense? Why? Tell me why this Stockton home would be a primary residence. And if it doesn't make sense, then the bank's going to come back around and says, well, you know what? Unless you can really show us that this is really going to be a primary residence, then yes, we'll agree upon it. But if not, then a lot of times we'll come back around and say, if it's an investment, this is what we can do for an investment. Yes.
I have a question about credit scores.
Mm-hmm.
And if multiple people are buying or going on a house together,
Yeah.
how does it work when one person has really good credit and another person has less than stellar credit?
That's a real good question, because when it comes to purchasing a home and when you guys have co-borrowers, all banks are going to look at every single person's credit. But the bad part about it is the banks will use the lowest of all the borrowers. So if I have a 600 credit score and you have an 800 credit score, I actually will hurt the transaction because my score is lower.
So in that case, would it be better for just the person with the 800 credit score to go in it alone?
As long as you can qualify for it. It's a matter of if you need all the co-borrowers to qualify for the loan, then yes, you don't have a choice. But if you can qualify it on your own, then yes, more power to you, because you will get the best of the best. Okay. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about what it would be like to, financial decisions for building a home rather than buying? Differences in the process?
When you build a home, and again, for us, it's called a construction loan, and we actually don't do construction loans. There's going to be very few lenders out there, and there's going to be specialized on that. Building a home, again, it becomes custom. So, of course, the benefit to you is you're building your home the way you want it. But when lending options, yeah, it's going to be far and few from it, because there's only a handful of lenders that are going to be willing to lend or to work on a construction project. And a lot of times, actually, with construction, they require a lot of money up front, too. Yes?
Remember for also graduate students?
Mm-hmm.
I've heard of graduate students having a problem getting loans because they don't often have a history of W-2s. Can you do you have a certain amount of time you expect, even though we would obviously be, perhaps in our first job as assistant professors, but do you have a certain history of amount of time you expect?
Sure.
sort of record of financial.
Good question, because again, that's part of qualifying. Each lender is going to actually have different qualifications. For us at Stanford, we look at where you're employed. We look at like the employment offer letter that you might have. So again, I'll use the example of you getting a job at Google. Google will give you an offer letter, and they're going to say, hey, your base salary is $150,000 and you get X, Y, Z. If you're a graduate student, most lenders are going to look at, there's no way that you're going to have a 2-year history. Because the rule of thumb is really, they want to see 2-year history. But when you're a student that just graduated and you just landed this all-time favorite job, you're getting paid a lot of money, you've kept your credit up, most lenders are going to say, sure. But it also falls back to, when you have a situation like that, is how much money are you going to put down? The lesser amount of money that you put, the more scrutiny that the lender is going to look at this loan. The more money you put down, the easier it's going to get. Okay. Okay. Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
You mentioned that the 30-year loans, 30-year fixed mortgages are typically low interest.
No, higher. Higher, yeah. The ARM products are typically lower, and that you'll see that once, when you guys are in position or thinking of buying a home, always look at all your options. Always just check different lenders, just so that you know what the market's doing in rates.